Alright, Diablo 4 players, let's hop into it. The most powerful items in Season 6 and the expansion Vessel of Hatred. So, I've been constantly getting asked, Slaydra, in Season 6, what are some of the new items that are absolutely a must play? Now, obviously it depends on the build that you're playing, but these are some of the ones that I wanted to highlight for all of the classes. So basically every single class will be able to utilize this. So for starters, let's go over the brand new helmet, the Heir of Perdition. This is a brand new mythic unique helm, and I know some people have the mindset of, oh, it's a mythic unique with a greater affix. I'm not going to get that. In Season 6, things are about to change because all of the mythics will drop with one greater affix. So your chances to get something good here are kind of two stats here, looking at critical strike chance as well as core skills, which is going to be for majority of builds. There's 2 out of the 4 that you have to hit, which means you have a 50% chance for this thing to actually roll good. Getting critical strike chance is important for majority of builds. Obviously, if you're playing like a damage over time or a thorns build, you don't really get to utilize this, but for most builds, this is going to be really good. Plus, the 200% damage to angels and demons is not a low stat at all, but specifically getting about half of your crit already done in just one piece of gear, that is absolutely unheard of, especially if you've checked out like Diablo 3 even. Getting that amount of crit is massive. And then on top of that, we also have that lucky hit chance, which is something that a lot of builds can utilize. Movement speed is a little bit mediocre, but specifically the ranks to the core skills is actually a pretty good thing as well, because that's the main reason why a lot of people enjoyed Harlequin, right? Harlequin gave you that massive amount of skills to everything. Now this one, technically it only covers core skills, so it may not apply to every single build, but the amount of crit that you're getting is just so hard to give up. But then on top of that, you get another multiplier of X60 damage, so that's a huge extra bonus multiplier, which is crazy because they took Crown of Lucian and they completely gutted that item back in the PTR when it was first announced. That was a very powerful item. By the way, everything that we're talking about is obviously on PTR in terms of the numbers here, so things are subject to change, but I want to go ahead and have this video ready for you guys so you guys can maybe keep in mind when you're making some planners for the next season, you can kind of maybe slot in some of these because these are going to be incredibly powerful. But specifically, this item over here is one of the best offensive items in the entire game that's getting added. Now, there is going to be some interesting play with this because we have kind of the emergence of maybe some support builds that may come out, depending on how hard the new Citadel content is, the raids. You may actually be able to slot this in a few different players in your party, and then you just kind of have one character be the carry, because when you start multiplying and getting this number to be even crazier, because remember, you can have 4 people in your party, which means that this could go up to 240x, and who's ever slaying monsters, if you just have like 3 supports and then 1 person that is doing your DPS, I mean, it may be a viable option. So there's a lot of play with this item as well. Not only is it already just solid for solo play, but even for group play, there is some play with potentially just having one person be the ultimate carry. But yeah, this is a fantastic item. The next item, we're actually going to have to go into the skill tree to show you guys how crazy this item is. So this is a brand new mythic as well. It is called the Shroud of False Death. Now the stats on this item aren't really too crazy. The stats that would be a little bit more lucrative would be the all stats. That's a really good thing for every single build, especially because your main stat can go even higher in the next season. And then on top of that, you get damage on next attack after stealth. That one's a little bit mediocre. Depending on what build you're playing, this could be pretty big. Maybe if you're playing the Shred Druid with maybe like Blurred Beast or something, you can do some cool stuff with that. And then you do get some HP, which is okay. Resource generation is a stat that normally doesn't roll on the chest piece, so if you really want to generate more resource, that's cool. And then you're able to actually gain stealth. Now, they may actually nerf the interaction if you don't attack and then you gain stealth. There are a lot of skills in this game where you can channel, or if you're playing a minion build, you can actually gain stealth and then nothing actually aggroes to you. This actually may get nerfed, but that's not the reason why we actually play this. The reason why this item is so powerful and godly in Season 6 is literally the first line, +1 to all passives. Now, depending on the class that you play, this could be like X50 damage or up to like 50% damage reduction. This thing alone makes this super, super powerful. If we were to go into the skill tree, this is on the Barbarian, but it doesn't really matter what class you're playing. You're getting +1 to every single one of these. Now, again, some classes you may not like want, let's say like Thorns, or you may not want like damage with bludgeoning and damage with slashing and damage with like, you know, 2 one-handeds or two-handers because it doesn't really fit. There's like literally too much to go into. But the fact that you're getting these many points, and keep in mind, they have actually changed up the skill tree. Now, for a lot of builds, especially on the Druid, there are so many passives now that really add up, and it's a 3% here, 3% here, but there's like 20, 30 of these passives that maybe your character class can benefit from. And we're not only talking about damage, we're talking about utility, sometimes even cooldown reduction, and just a lot of great stats overall. So the reason why this item is super powerful, and maybe one of the most powerful items in the entire game, is just because of that +1 to all passives. Now, the bonus damage to stealth, there are a few builds that can make use out of this, but I kind of want to go over like everything that people can actually utilize for all of the builds. But that is a stat that is very, very powerful if you're playing maybe Rogue. There's ways to like enter and break stealth like consistently, especially if you're playing the new like grenade builds. There's a lot of stealth in that one, so you can utilize it for that. But on top of that, there are other classes that normally wouldn't gain stealth that could now gain stealth that maybe have some cool interaction. The next thing that I want to go over is anything with lucky hit chance. Fist of Fate is actually super powerful, and it's going to maintain its power in the next upcoming season, especially since we're getting a new class. We can maybe have all these chances for these other things to activate on the lucky hit, and this item is still going to be really strong. It did not receive any nerfs, which is kind of a big surprise, but the thing with this item is it's go big or go home with sometimes the rolls on it, because you either get 0.1 crit or 12%, you know. It's a very big range on the roll, but this is still one of the most powerful items in the game. But this isn't necessarily a newer item, it's just something that I still think has some of the biggest power in the entire game. Next up, we're actually going to be looking at some other boots. What I wanted to highlight here first, though, was specifically if you get a greater affix and triple masterworking on some boots, you can get up to 32 to all resistances. And the reason why I wanted to highlight boots here in this category is because a lot of people for endgame, if you look at any content creators builds, most of us are playing Tyrael's Might, and it's specifically for the damage reduction, as well as getting that maximum to all res and giving us all the resistance we would actually need, because that solves the problem of resistances basically instantly. And in the next season, we're getting some updates, and as we climb into the harder difficulties, we're going to get negative resistances. Tyrael's does pretty much solve all of that, but if you want to fit in the brand new Shroud of False Death, you need to get resistances somewhere. Depending on the class you may play, this is actually pretty big. So one piece of gear that is really good already is the Rakanoths Wake, and I think this is going to be an item that a lot of people will actually consider because it already has cooldown reduction built into it, and a lot of builds can do non-physical damage. Obviously, if you're playing a build that does physical damage, well, you can't apply that bonus there, but it's specifically to give you almost 100 resistances, and that is quite big. So the reason why that this item will be really godly in the next upcoming season for some builds is because it allows you to play the Shroud of False Death, and then you can go ahead and play this, and then your resistances are basically covered, plus it gives you a stat that you normally don't get in the boot category, which is the cooldown reduction. So it's going to be actually very powerful. Now, speaking of powerful, this item, surprisingly, guys, if they do not update this, keep in mind I'm making this video before the season comes out, Azurath is going to be one of the most powerful items in the entire game. And if you're wondering, why the heck is it super powerful? Well, because they did all these numbers, like scrunches, they tried to reduce the numbers on a lot of stats here, not looking at the special unique power of the Azurath for that 20% chance to freeze and deal damage. That actually is an okay amount of damage, but what we're really looking at is that lucky hit chance to deal that amount of cold damage. Now, this number will scale as your character has all of their gear on. So you can see over here, it only says that it can deal up to, 6,000. Now, if we go ahead and masterwork this, as well as look at a character that is actually fully built, how much damage does it actually do? Well, it's actually insanely, insanely strong. We're looking at a 40% chance to deal 18,000 damage. Now, obviously, this is getting the masterwork done on it, but that number is actually massive, okay? So to compare this stat, again, the thing is that you'd have to kind of look at it from a viewpoint of the new number scrunches. So this number over here is actually crazy high. And to kind of give you guys a comparison, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably seen lots of Andariel's builds, right? They emerged specifically in Season 5 because the numbers got super mega buffed on Andariel's. Well, the new Andariel's has a 20% chance, and this is basically the same character over here. And I know that this is, like, normally you probably wouldn't play Andariel's on a Barbarian, but it scales with all of your stats, right? So we're looking at this number in comparison. You have a 20% chance to deal 25,000 damage. Now, that damage, though, is over 5 seconds. And if we were to compare this to a Azarath, well, we have a 40%, which is double the chance to deal 18,000 damage. So even though, I mean, if we were to look at this like, okay, it does a little bit less, but this is over 5 seconds. This is instantly. And the fact that it has double the lucky hit proc chance, on top of also having a bonus on lucky hit chance to actually freeze enemies and do this bonus, that's actually incredibly powerful, and this is something that may be overseen, as in they probably didn't intend it to be this high. If this stays in, guys, you could take pretty much any class, slap on Azarath, slap on some lucky hit, basically the Fist of Fate, and you have an S tier build. And it actually has some pretty good stats on it. All stats is already pretty good, as well as attack speed. Now, cold resistance is like a whatever, but the lucky hit freeze could be pretty good. Maybe you're playing a rogue and you can get a bonus to, let's say, crowd control, the frigid finesse. There's a lot of bonuses, control on the sorcerer's board. There's a lot of bonuses. Heck, even on the spiritborn, there are bonuses to crowd control as well. So this stat is actually pretty good, but it's specifically the amount of damage that you're getting here. The numbers really didn't get scrunched on Azarath. There's a couple builds out there that were showing this off on the PTR, and it is crazy good. So if you can fit in Azarath, like you don't need a weapon for like your skill to, you know, cast 2 times, it can be pretty big, especially if you're looking at any build, specifically with the Barbarian, because Barbarian has like the 2 one-handers, right? You can have the X skill to activate 2 times, right? Or do damage twice. This is massive, and it's probably going to get nerfed. I'll be honest on this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this basically gets absolutely destroyed. Fingers crossed, though, if this doesn't get nerfed, guys, every single build's going to be pretty powerful as long as you slap an Azarath. But these are kind of some items that I wanted to go ahead and make a video on, but if there's any other items that you guys felt like I missed out on, they're going to be absolutely godly in Season 6. Let me know down below. But the number 1 spot is actually going to be Azarath. This is 100% just way out of control for the damage, but again, I'm hoping it doesn't get changed because we can actually now just make Azarath builds. And there were already Azarath Doombringer builds, but the numbers just didn't really get scrunched on this one. So we'll wait and see if this happens to stay in. But anyways, that's going to go and wrap up the video. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn the bell if you guys want to see an update to any godly items coming out in Season 6 when it does finally launch. And I'll let you guys know if anything has changed, specifically Azarath, though. Don't expect to get those results, but I think that the other items, they'll probably not get nerfed. Anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.